Look at him. Can't even push that mop straight. How pathetic. The words echoed across the marble floor of the New York Grand Exchange building. A skyscraper so imposing it seemed to scrape the edge of the clouds. Suits and high heels clicked against the polished lobby, and the man everyone was staring at, Mike Carter, 32, janitor, kept his eyes fixed on the ground. He didn't flinch, didn't fire back, just tightened his grip on the mop handle. From a balcony above, Ethan Blackwell, billionaire CEO of Blackwell Enterprises, smirked as though he had delivered the punchline of the century. His entourage of executives laughed on cue, sipping their overpriced lattes, pretending the humiliation wasn't cruel but merely light office humor. "Come on, Mike, smile a little," Ethan shouted again. "A man like you, cleaning up after real players like us, you're part of history. You get to mop the floor where billion-dollar deals are made." The laughter roared louder. A receptionist covered her mouth but didn't intervene. Security guards shifted uncomfortably yet said nothing. And Mike, quiet, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands that had seen more than just mop buckets, did what he always did. He let the insult pass, because arguing never changed anything. But inside, a storm brewed. Mike Carter wasn't just a janitor. Before this life, before the faded uniform and rubber gloves, he was something else. Something dangerous. Something the world had forgotten because he had buried it deep. The city was alive outside. Taxis honking, street vendors shouting, digital billboards glowing with faces of men like Ethan Blackwell, untouchable, arrogant, crowned kings of glass towers. And here was Mike, invisible to them all, at least until today. Because today was the day everything broke. Mike's story had started like any other blue-collar workers. He'd taken the janitor job at the Grand Exchange building after life had chewed him up and spit him out. Years ago, he had been a soldier, special operations, the kind of missions no one ever read about in the papers. He had skills most men couldn't even imagine. Close-quarters combat, tactical awareness, reflexes that could slice milliseconds into lifetimes. But war had left him hollow. One bad mission, one choice that haunted him. He left that world behind, swore never to raise a weapon again, and tried to live quietly, anonymously. That he thought the mop would be his shield. A simple man, blending into the background. Until Ethan Blackwell decided to make him the building's punchline. "Mike, careful. You missed a spot." Ethan's voice cut through the lobby again. He pointed at a faint streak of dust. Cameras flashed. One of Ethan's assistants even filmed the moment, snickering, probably to post it online later with some caption like, "Even janitors need performance reviews." Mike looked up just briefly, and for a split second their eyes met. Ethan's gleamed with superiority. Mike's, empty, restrained, but carrying something dangerous beneath the surface. Something Ethan couldn't recognize. The clock above the lobby struck 9:17 a.m. And at 9:18, the world changed. IT started as a flicker. Lights dimming, screens shutting off, the hum of the massive building falling silent. The entire skyscraper plunged into darkness. And then, seconds later, red emergency lights flooded the hallways. Confusion spread like wildfire. Phones went dead. Elevators froze mid-floor. Then came the sound. A sharp metallic crash from the upper levels, followed by the unmistakable echo of gunfire. Screams erupted. Dozens of employees scattered, heels clattering across the marble, papers flying through the air like snow. The lobby turned into chaos as men dressed in black tactical gear stormed the building, automatic rifles raised. "Everybody down!" one shouted, his masked face illuminated by the red glow. "Hands on the floor now." The world's richest men and women, executives, investors, politicians, dropped like schoolchildren caught in a fire drill. Panic turned to silence, broken only by muffled sobs. Mike stood frozen, mop still in hand. He saw their weapons, the precision of their movements, the way they secured every entrance. Whoever these men were, they weren't amateurs. And then he saw their target. It wasn't random. It wasn't a robbery. It was Ethan Blackwell. The billionaire who mocked him just minutes ago was suddenly the center of terror. The masked leader grabbed Ethan by the collar, yanking him forward as his bodyguards lay helplessly disarmed. "You've stolen from the wrong people, Blackwell," the man growled. "Now you pay." Ethan's arrogance evaporated instantly. His voice cracked. Wait, we can negotiate." A gun pressed against his head silenced him. The lobby froze. People prayed. No one dared move. Not the guards, not the executives. No one. Except Mike. He could have stayed down. He could have been just another terrified bystander. But in that moment, as the masked men prepared to drag Ethan away, Mike's instincts, buried for years, roared back to life. His vision narrowed. His pulse steadied. The mop in his hand wasn't just a mop anymore. It was reach, leverage, a weapon waiting to be used. And for the first time in years, the soldier inside him whispered, "It's time." This was the hook. The moment nobody saw coming. The moment the man they all laughed at would step out of the shadows and into legend. The red emergency lights pulsed like a heartbeat through the lobby, casting long shadows across terrified faces. The masked gunman barked orders, dragging hostages into a huddled circle near the front desk. Every phone was dead, every door sealed. The leader of the group shoved Ethan Blackwell to his knees in front of everyone. The billionaire's polished shoes squeaked against the marble, a stark contrast to the barrel of the rifle pressed against his temple. "Please?" Ethan stammered, sweat running down his forehead. "Whatever you want. Money, stocks, crypto, it's yours. Just don't." The leader cut him off with a backhand strike across the face. The crack echoed through the silence. "This isn't about your money, Blackwell. It's about justice." The crowd gasped. Executives who had once sneered at janitors and deliverymen now cowered like children. A receptionist clutched her pearls, muttering prayers under her breath. Two security guards, unarmed and powerless, lay flat on the ground with their hands behind their heads. And Mike Carter, he still stood, mop in hand, slightly apart from the group. To most, he looked like he hadn't yet processed what was happening. But inside, the gears of a soldier's mind turned with lethal precision. Mike studied them. 5 men. 3 on the ground floor, 2 covering the mezzanine. Weapons, modified AR-15s, extended mags. Armor, Kevlar vests, not full plates. Movements, disciplined, trained. Not mercs, ex-military, most likely disgruntled or hired guns. He blinked slowly, cataloging every detail. The average person saw chaos. Mike saw weaknesses, blind spots, patterns. His breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped to combat rhythm. The noise of panic dulled until all he could hear was the click of safeties, the shuffle of boots, the heavy breath of men with adrenaline pumping through their veins. "Get the janitor!" one of the gunmen suddenly barked. On the ground with the rest. The man nearest Mike advanced, rifle raised. The barrel gleamed red under the emergency lights. Mike lowered his eyes, feigning compliance, gripping the mop like a man clinging to the last shred of dignity. He bent his knees as though preparing to kneel. The gunman closed in, one hand reaching out to shove him down. And then it happened. In less than a second, Mike shifted his weight, pivoted on his heel, and swung the mop like a spear. The wooden handle cracked against the gunman's wrist, knocking the rifle sideways. Before the man could recover, Mike spun the mop, sweeping low, smashing the base into the back of his knee. The gunman collapsed with a grunt. Gasps rippled through the lobby. No one had expected it, least of all the other gunmen. Mike didn't pause. He ripped the rifle from the stunned attacker, flipped it expertly, and drove the buttstock into the man's jaw. A sickening thud, and the first gunman went limp. 3 seconds. That was all it took. "Get him!" another shouted from across the room. Bullets sprayed, glass shattering as rounds tore into the reception desk. Hostages screamed and ducked. Ethan Blackwell crawled backward on his hands and knees, trying to hide behind his own employees. But Mike had already moved. rolling behind a marble pillar as chunks of stone chipped off from gunfire. He crouched, checked the rifle, safety off, loaded. His hands remembered the weight like an old friend. Adrenaline surged, but his mind was cold, precise. 2 shooters on the ground, one above left mezzanine, one above right. Leader holding Blackwell. Need to split them. Need a distraction. The hostages whimpered. Some looked at Mike with disbelief, as though seeing him for the first time. Only minutes ago, he was the janitor. Now he was moving like something out of a war movie. One of the women, trembling, whispered, "Who is he?" Mike didn't answer. He leaned out, fired 2 controlled shots. Pop, pop. Both bullets shattered light fixtures above the mezzanine. Sparks showered down, blinding the gunman posted there. The man cursed, ducking back for cover. That was the opening. Mike darted from the pillar, sprinting low and fast across the floor. The second gunman tried to track him, spraying bullets wildly, but Mike slid across the marble, shoulder first, and came up just close enough to fire. 1 precise shot to the vest, knocking the wind out of the attacker, followed by a brutal elbow strike that dropped him unconscious. Chaos reigned. The gunmen were shouting over each other now, their formation collapsing. "Take him down! Watch the hostages! He's military. Don't let him." The leader tightened his grip on Ethan Blackwell, yanking him upright as a human shield. "Stay back or the CEO dies," he roared, pressing the gun harder against Ethan's skull. The billionaire whimpered, tears streaking his once proud face. "Please, somebody do something." Everybody looked at Mike. The janitor, the nobody, the man they had laughed at, and Mike, calm, steady, locked eyes with the leader. "I'm not here to save him," Mike said, voice low but cutting through the room. "I'm here to stop you." The line hit like thunder. The leader's grip faltered just slightly, because in that instant, he realized he wasn't facing a janitor. He was facing a soldier. The next move would decide everything. Would Mike risk a head-on fight? Could he neutralize the leader without getting Ethan killed? The building was a powder keg, seconds away from exploding into violence. And Mike Carter, the man nobody respected, was holding the match. The red glow of the emergency lights painted the lobby like a battlefield. Shards of glass glittered across the marble floor. Dozens of hostages held their breath, watching a janitor-turned-warrior face down an armed militia. The leader gripped Ethan Blackwell tighter, pressing the cold steel of his rifle against the billionaire's trembling head. His voice was sharp, commanding, "Drop the weapon, janitor, or the CEO dies." Mike Carter didn't flinch. He stood tall now, rifle angled low but ready, eyes locked on the man in the mask. His voice was calm, deadly calm. "You think holding him makes you safe? He's not a shield. He's a liability." The room froze. No one had ever spoken to Ethan Blackwell like that, especially not when his life was on the line. Ethan's jaw dropped in horror. What? But Mike wasn't bluffing. He was calculating, studying the leader's stance, the tremor in his trigger finger, the way his left boot shifted slightly for balance. Every detail told him the man was no stranger to violence, but also no stranger to fear. 1 breath in, 1 breath out. Mike moved. He feinted left, drawing the leader's aim, then dove right. The rifle barked, crack, but the bullet whizzed harmlessly past. In the same motion, Mike fired a controlled burst into the marble column beside the leader's head. Shards exploded outward, forcing the masked man to recoil, instinctively loosening his grip on Ethan. That fraction of a second was all Mike needed. He surged forward, sliding across the floor in a blur, and slammed the butt of his rifle into the leader's ribs. The gun clattered away. Ethan collapsed to the ground, scrambling backward like a rat in a flood. The leader snarled and swung a combat knife from his belt, slashing at Mike's chest. Mike twisted, the blade grazing his uniform, and countered with a brutal knee strike to the gut. The air whooshed out of the man's lungs, but the fight wasn't over. Above, One of the mezzanine gunmen had recovered his vision and raised his weapon. He took aim at Mike's back, a scream from the hostages. "Behind you!" Mike spun, rifle snapping up. Pop pop. 2 rounds ripped through the mezzanine railing. The gunman toppled, weapon clattering uselessly as he hit the floor below. The crowd gasped. Some cheered through their fear. The janitor was dismantling an entire paramilitary team before their eyes. 3 down. 2 left. The remaining men regrouped near the east stairwell, weapons trained on Mike. They fired in tandem, bullets tearing through potted plants and ricocheting off steel beams. Mike dropped low, rolling behind an overturned desk. Splinters exploded above his head as rounds chewed through the wood. "Think. Move. Don't let them pin you." He spotted a cleaning cart overturned nearby. Its metal frame glinted under the red lights. He kicked it hard, sending it rolling across the floor as a moving shield. Bullets pinged against it, sparks flying. Using the distraction, Mike bolted out low and fast. He closed the distance in seconds, sliding across the marble again. His rifle swung like a bat, smashing into the first gunman's knees. The man collapsed, screaming. Mike finished him with a sharp elbow strike to the temple. The last attacker roared, swinging his rifle like a club. Mike blocked with his forearm, pain shooting up his arm, but he absorbed it. With a twist of his body, he locked the man's arm, spun him around, and used his own momentum to slam him headfirst into a marble column. The crack echoed. The man dropped, unconscious, silence. The entire lobby stood still, the gunfire replaced by the distant wail of approaching sirens. Bodies of the defeated attackers lay scattered across the marble floor. Hostages clung to one another, staring wide-eyed at the man who had just saved them. And in the middle of it all stood Mike Carter, sweat dripping, uniform torn, chest rising and falling steadily. The mop lay discarded on the ground. In its place, the rifle hung loosely in his grip, smoke curling from the barrel. He looked less like a janitor now, and more like a ghost from another world. Ethan Blackwell, still trembling on the floor, stared up at him in disbelief. His face was pale, his voice shaking. You saved me." Mike's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, towering over the billionaire who had mocked him minutes ago. "No," Mike said flatly. "I saved them." He glanced at the terrified employees, the assistants, the security guards, all the people Ethan treated as disposable. His words carried weight heavier than any bullet. You were just in the way." The room went dead quiet. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed, but no words came. For the first time in his gilded life, the CEO had no power, no control. And every single person in that lobby saw the truth. The man they laughed at was the only reason they were alive. The sound of boots thundered as SWAT teams poured into the building, weapons raised. They froze, stunned at the scene. Armed gunmen subdued, hostages alive, and a janitor standing tall among them. One of the SWAT leaders lowered his weapon slowly. His voice betrayed both awe and confusion. "Who the hell are you?" Mike looked at him, eyes calm but distant, like a man half in the present and half in the past. He didn't answer. Instead, he set the rifle gently on the ground, picked up his mop again, and started walking toward the exit, an victory pose. No speech, just a man returning to anonymity. But the legend had already been written. The lobby of the Grand Exchange was a graveyard of shattered glass, overturned furniture, and silent shock. The gunman lay unconscious, bound by the SWAT team within minutes. Hostages were being escorted out one by one, wrapped in emergency blankets, faces pale but alive. But the center of attention wasn't the armed men anymore. It was Mike Carter. "Sir, please," one of the SWAT officers said, jogging to catch up with him as he walked toward the exit. "We need a statement. At least your name." Mike kept moving, mop dragging faintly against the floor as though he'd simply gone back to work. His voice was calm, almost detached. "I'm just the janitor." The officer blinked, baffled. but didn't push further. Because how could you? What words could you force from a man who just dismantled a militia with nothing but instinct and grit? Outside, the chaos was even louder. Dozens of news vans lined the street, reporters shouting into cameras. Helicopters thundered overhead, capturing live aerial footage of police swarming the skyscraper. Sirens wailed, barricades stretched across the block, and hundreds of onlookers pressed against police tape. Phones raised high to film the scene. And then, like a ripple spreading across water, the whispers began. Who was he? They said it was the janitor. No way. You're telling me a janitor took down 5 armed terrorists? I saw it. I was there. He moved like a soldier or something. No, he moved like a ghost. By the time Mike stepped out into the flashing lights, the world had already written the first chapter of his legend. Ethan Blackwell stumbled out minutes later, shielded by a wall of police escorts and assistants. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, stained with sweat. Cameras swarmed him instantly. Mr. Blackwell, what happened in there? Who were the attackers targeting you for? Is it true you were taken hostage? Ethan forced a smile, trying to salvage dignity. We were lucky today. Very lucky. The authorities responded quickly. Sir, one reporter interrupted. Witnesses say it wasn't the authorities who stopped them. They say it was your janitor. The question cut through like a blade. Ethan froze, jaw tightening. He glanced sideways and there was Mike, standing just beyond the cameras, mop still in hand, trying to disappear into the crowd. All the flashing lenses turned. Reporters surged toward him. Sir, who are you? What's your name? How did you do it? Are you military? Mike raised a hand, not in greeting but in quiet refusal. His eyes flicked once toward the cameras, then back down. No comment, and he turned to leave. The footage went viral before midnight. Clips of a janitor disarming gunmen in seconds flooded TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, news outlets across the world. Slow-motion breakdowns of his moves. Headlines that screamed, "The janitor who saved Wall Street. Nobody to legend. The man they all laughed at. Real-life action hero stops terror attack." Mike Carter's face, once ignored in every hallway, was now plastered across screens in Times Square. But while the world was building him into a hero, Mike himself returned to the shadows. Days later, the Grand Exchange lobby was repaired, polished back to perfection. Employees walked through with their usual arrogance, but whispers lingered. They glanced at corners, half expecting to see the janitor with the mop. Some spoke with guilt. I laughed at him once. God, I feel sick about it now. He saved my life. I didn't even say thank you. Maybe we never really saw him at all. And Ethan Blackwell? The humiliation burned like acid. For years he had built his empire on dominance, on the illusion of untouchable superiority. But one viral video had destroyed that carefully constructed image. The world didn't see him as the powerful CEO anymore. They saw the man crying on the floor, begging for his life, while the janitor he mocked became the hero. Behind closed doors, in his penthouse office, Ethan replayed the footage over and over. Each time, the same scenes. His insults echoing across the lobby, his fear when the gun pressed to his head, Mike's cold words. I saved them. You were just in the way. No amount of money could erase it. No PR campaign could bury it. The truth had taken root, and Ethan knew. He would never live it down. But for Mike Carter, life was different. He walked the same streets, but strangers now looked at him twice, whispering as he passed. Some tried to stop him, thank him, even shake his hand. He declined politely, always moving, always avoiding the spotlight. Because he hadn't done it for fame. He hadn't done it for Ethan. He hadn't even done it for redemption. He did it because, deep down, he couldn't stop being who he was. A protector. A soldier. A man forged in fire, trying to live in silence. But silence, he realized now, was no longer an option. The legend had been born, whether he wanted it or not. The city never forgot. Weeks after the Grand Exchange siege, the story was still alive. News anchors called it the day a janitor saved Manhattan. Podcasts dissected his every move. Martial arts instructors analyzed his takedowns. Even Hollywood circled, hungry to adapt the legend. But Mike Carter, he remained where he had always been. In the shadows, he refused interviews, ignored sponsorship offers, and turned down every attempt to brand him as a symbol. To him, it wasn't about glory. It was about survival, about instinct, about doing what had to be done when nobody else could. And yet, the whispers grew louder. People who once ignored him now saw hope in his silence. People who once laughed at him now taught their children his name. The janitor who was nobody had become a mirror for millions of ordinary lives, reminding them that greatness doesn't wear a suit, doesn't sit in boardrooms, doesn't announce itself with power. Sometimes, greatness wears a name tag and carries a mop. One evening, long after the frenzy had faded, Mike walked down an empty street in Brooklyn. Neon lights buzzed. Distant traffic hummed. He paused at a diner window, watching families laugh over greasy fries, children chasing each other in the glow of street lamps. That was why he had done it. Not for Ethan Blackwell, not for the cameras, but for moments like this, quiet lives that deserve to go on, unnoticed, unthreatened. Mike Carter, the man they laughed at, had become something greater than a hero. That he had become a reminder that a single ordinary person with courage in the right moment could change everything. And that, my friends, is the story of a man who went from nobody to legend. A janitor the world mocked until the day he stood up and proved that true power lies not in status, but in action. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that inside every ordinary person hides extraordinary strength, then I invite you to join us. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story of courage, grit, and transformation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the power of storytelling, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, legends are born in the unlikeliest places.